Hi everyone, welcome back. Welcome back to the channel, and if you like the cinematic spin that I put on board game videos, then please subscribe. But today, I have so many thoughts about this tower, about this beautiful game, about the app, but let's start first with an overview. So, what is Return to Dark Tower? Well, it's a reimagining, it's an expansion of older games that came out in the 80s. You're playing as one out of 4 asymmetric heroes, each from a different kingdom with their own advantages, and your goal is to defeat the evils lurking from the tower as they descend from this evil place. If you're playing in solo or cooperative mode, there are 9 different missions for you to choose from, and each of them are totally different. So you can have ones where you're trying to gather potions in order to create this bomb for this alchemist to throw at the tower and break it down. There's another one where you're assassinating different targets and helping out this other killer. And as a third example, there's another one where you're even recruiting hundreds of warriors in order to meet you at the footsteps of the Dark Tower. That's co-op mode and solo mode. Now for competitive mode, your goal is to complete 3 out of 4 tests and be the first one to find the relic hidden within the dungeons of the Dark Tower. Now this is what you're doing on your turn. Each hero is going to start off by gaining some resources. For example, the Orphan Scion, imagine this as like your mage class. So she's going to be using the main resource of the game, which is Spirit, in order to access different abilities like cleansing different skulls from the map, or also gaining different advantages to utilize in battle. My favorite class to play, the Brutal Warlord, your classic warrior class going around battling different monsters, excels at combat. You have your Relic Hunter, who is really good at gaining different treasures. He's all about potions, which are random dispensable items. And then lastly, you have kind of like your rogue class, but also a jack of all trades. Very, very good jack of all trades though. And this one is your Spy Master. Super mobile, being able to teleport within kingdoms, and also has a wide variety of abilities as well. So that is how we begin our turn. We start off with our own unique starting abilities. And then we go into our main actions, our heroic action, which is to cleanse. That means you're going to be taking and removing skulls from the map depending on where you're located. And that matters because skulls are a really big part of this game. Skulls are what is dropping into the tower at the end of every one of your turns. Now, when you drop a skull into the tower at the end of your turn, it triggers the app, and the app will then proceed to show you an event that happens, or maybe nothing happens at all. But I would say typically when you drop a skull in there, something interesting is going to happen. Now, the app will tell you how many skulls that you put on your map, but you're also going to have a side pool of skulls as well. If you cannot take skulls from there and drop it into the tower, then you lose the game. So that's why skulls are important. We have to balance out the amount of resources that we have available in order for us to not meet that losing condition. Second thing is battle. Battle is a huge part of this game, and it's very different from other games I think that you might have experienced. So battle here, when you fight a monster, there are different levels. You have level 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 being your epic boss monster. This is your final adversary. Depending on what level your monster is, you're going to choose that monster level in the app. And when that happens, you're going to choose a random set of cards that are unveiled through the app. So let's say I'm fighting a level 3 spider. I'm gonna go through the app, I'm gonna pick 3 random cards. They get unveiled and they are totally random, and for the most part, they're going to be very different each time. And on top of that, you can apply advantages to your fights. You'll see here how the conditions are going to cause you to lose something. Either you lose spirit or warriors or different pieces of gear and so on. But when you apply advantages that you gain either innately, you either start with some, because whatever is labeled in black is what you start with, and you can gain more advantages through potions, through equipment, through different areas of the game as the story goes on. But when you apply advantages to your combat systems, you can actually decrease the condition. So instead of losing like 15 warriors, you can lose 10 warriors. And then if you apply enough, sometimes the game will also trigger a really cool incentive for you as well. So from there, maybe instead of losing 10 warriors, you'll gain 1 piece of gear instead from fighting. That is how combat works in this game, and it is really, really fun. And then from there, you also have questing, which is your last of your heroic abilities. Questing happens when you are in a certain region. Sometimes dungeons will pop up, and again, it's also through the app. When you are exploring through a dungeon, you'll be facing different challenges as you are traversing across these mysterious pathways. Your reward is gaining a very, very powerful ally that's going to help you throughout the entire game, and that will also be integrated into the app as well. So we start off gaining resources, and then we're going to end up cleansing different parts of the kingdom, removing skulls. We're going to be battling different monsters, and we're also going to be questing across the map. The last thing that you end up doing in turn is reinforcing reinforcing different buildings that you're on. And each building that you reinforce will give you a unique set of rewards. There are 4 in total. From there, like I said earlier, is that you're gonna take your skull and you're gonna drop it in the tower. That triggers an event or nothing at all. Typically, it'll be an event. Okay, now that you know how the game works, let me break down the rest of the view in this way. We'll talk about the 3 different modes. So we'll go from cooperative mode to competitive mode to solo mode. Let's start off first with cooperative mode and why it's so freaking amazing. I usually don't like co-ops, but this is such a fun co-op game. The immersion that you get from this 3D tower to the app, I think is so seamless, and it really is a full-on world builder. It makes you so immersed into the game because the tower is not just for those that were worried, because I was very worried myself, I was scared that this is going to be like a glorified dice tower. I don't think so. I really don't think it is, because there are a ton of different components. I think this is an engineering feat alone. Here's why. It has speakers, it has LEDs, it has these removable plates that you can just take out, and then the motors inside will be spinning, so you don't know which part of the tower is going to open, and that matters because if different signs unveil, then it's going to affect the kingdom that you're currently in. It actually will affect the amount of resources that you have to spend depending on whichever action shows up in the plate. So I love the element of surprise that this tower integrated with the app brings. The app also is very seamless. I was also scared that there were gonna be a lot of bugs or it wasn't gonna work well. It wasn't gonna be a well-oiled machine being connected to the tower and all the Bluetooth connections, all that hard wiring stuff. I was scared that it wasn't gonna be seamless, but it's never disconnected on me. The tower does use 3 AA batteries, and so far, it's lasted through 4 games. I forgot to mention this earlier, but I played this competitively, cooperatively, solo, and also with every single character, so that makes 4 games total played. In those 4 games, the tower has lasted battery life throughout the entire thing. So I think this one possible bug to note in the app is that the battery life isn't really indicative of what the actual battery is. Second thing is that when you are fighting, when you're in combat, supposedly from what I understand in the game manual, in combat, when you're fighting the last boss, when you're fighting the final adversary, it's supposed to save the advantages that you're using. But when you fight and you retreat and you come back, those advantages don't seem to be saved unless you're supposed to manually input them. So in the app, battery life is a little bit weird, and the final adversary fight doesn't seem to be saved as you are retreating and going back to it. Okay, I'm gonna limit myself to 3 things I love about the co-op mode of this game. I love the variety that you get. The heroes that you choose, the starting kingdoms that you choose, the monsters that you can pick. There is so much variety, and every single game that you play will be different. The missions that you have access to, 9 different missions, and the amount of variety that you get in the monsters that you're playing with, the conditions that each monster brings, how each monster is going to target you and chase after you. I love that co-op experience. It is beautiful. It is so seamless, and I love, love, love how that plays. Secondly, the reason why I typically don't like co-ops is because you lose that sense of individuality. If everyone has like a shared pool, it doesn't really make it fun for me. So here, I love that it's actually limiting that factor. So when you're playing co-op, in order for you to have the same pool, essentially, of resources, you actually have to be on the same space as another player. And the things that you can trade with another player is also limited. You can't give them like advantages. You also can't give them corruptions. So I love how it's limiting movement and the amount of things that you can trade, and that makes the co-op experience for me way, way better. I love that individuality that it is preserving in that sense. To add on to that, the team play experience here is so fun because each character really is good at one main thing. And when you capitalize on those traits and those unique character advantages, everyone brings something different to the table. And I love that because you are really coordinating to travel across the map, to gain different resources, to explore different dungeons while someone else is battling and trying to get rid of monsters while another person is also trying to diminish the skulls to make sure we have a pool available in order for us to drop skulls into the tower. That is some really cool synchronicity. Last thing, the final boss fight is really epic. I think it would have been a nice little touch if they added in final boss fight music in the app as it plays. The music itself is fine. I think it's really cool, it's entertaining, but if they added like epic Final Fantasy boss fight music when you're fighting the final adversary, it would have been just an extra cherry on top. But it's good, it's fun, it's rewarding. I've also played it on the gritty difficulty as well, and it is tough. So I love the difficulty level and how it scales across 1, 2. We played up to 3 players for this. So that is co-op. And if you are about to receive your Return to Dark Tower pledge, if you are already about to play this game, this is the first time I'm gonna say in any video across my channel, but I would highly recommend that you actually stop watching this video because I don't want to ruin your gameplay experience. Just enjoy the game, come back to this video later after you played it and see if we align on some thoughts, see if we disagree on some thoughts. From here, let's talk about the issues that I have with competitive mode. If you've ever played World of Warcraft and you've experienced PvP and PvE, then you know PvP, the person confrontation modes, have always been like underplayed. I feel like we always crave PvP, but then no one cares and always focuses on like the PvE elements. This is what's happening here. The co-op mode is amazing. It is brilliant. It's beautifully designed, and I think it's really, really fun. But that's like the golden child of this game. And then we switch on over to competitive mode. This is the forgotten child because in competitive mode, you have these cards that I'm gonna throw up on screen right now. To play this mode, you complete 3 out of 4 of these tests, and then you go to the tower and complete a dungeon, be the first one to find a relic. It sounds cool and I wish it played cool, but it really feels just like a list of chores that everyone has access to. Everyone actually has the exact same cards. The only difference is that you're completing these objectives in a different part of the map. It's really sad because the reason why I backed this game actually was because it offered a competitive mode, but the competitive mode, bottom line, is just very, very underwhelming, and you literally feel like you are checking off a list of things to do before you reach the final part, which is just exploring a dungeon. Instead of that, I think this would have been the perfect time to introduce a victory point system into the game. Like maybe you gain different advantages by battling. Like as you're battling one monster, you gain one advantage, one wild advantage that you can use throughout combat. And then you'll score a different amount of victory points depending on how many monsters that you fight. But at the same time, if you don't want to fight monsters, maybe you want to explore, and you'll gain advantages as you're exploring different areas and you're questing different places, and you gain advantages that's pushing you towards that kind of skill tree. So that's one way I think competitive mode could be addressed, which is to introduce a victory point system and reward players for doing things that they want to do versus a general checklist for everyone to do. Second thing is, why remove the final adversary that's offered in the co-op mode and not put it in the competitive mode as well? Instead of going and exploring the dungeon, why not fight a final adversary? And every time you fight the adversary, maybe you'll gain a different amount of victory points as well. Again, another way to introduce a more interesting aspect to competitive play in this game. What if we had like a 2v2 experience? What if each team was given a specific objective? This team has to focus on battle, this team has to focus on questing, and then they gain advantages tailored towards questing, and this team tailored towards combat. And they are competing against each other in competitive mode to unlock the final adversary that is tailored towards combat, that's tailored towards questing at the very end. And whoever beats the final adversary first wins. Or let's say if we don't want to introduce a victory point system and we want to stay as true as possible to the tower and the mechanics here, what about like a last one standing wins? The tower every month will spit out a new condition that you have to meet, a new quest that you have to complete in that amount of time. And if you don't, then you get eliminated from the game. Something like that, just something that's just more interesting than here are cards that you have to complete and go to the dungeon first. Second thing I don't like about this game, and this actually happened in one of our competitive plays, but I was playing against Mormo, I was fighting against Mormo, and I was pouring all these resources into beating this monster. I was pouring soldiers and using all these advantages and spirits and just everything that you can name, I was pouring into defeating this crazy monster. You kind of have to preserve the amount of advantages that you use because you usually don't get incentives for battle until you use all your advantages in one phase of that card. But I preserved the advantages so I can actually defeat Mormo, and at the very end, I got nothing. So that's weird. I feel like players should be rewarded for using all those resources. There should be battle rewards regardless of what it is. Like even just have players gain 1 treasure card, something to reward them for defeating a monster, I think is what this game is missing, and that is especially amplified in competitive mode where you have 0 incentive to defeat a monster. Even if monsters get stronger the longer you leave them on the map, if you don't face them and they don't move, then there's really no reason for you to fight a monster, and rather it's better to just finish and target your objectives. So those are my thoughts on competitive mode. And to wrap up this video talking about solo mode, dude, this game is like so good solo. Honestly, like I got so lost in the world. It's so immersive. Like I said earlier, the entire experience it introduces so much variety from the characters that you can choose. I actually play with like 2 different characters, which is even more fun playing solo. But like the world building and the immersiveness that this tower, the app, and the entire storyline that it builds every single time, that variety, if you like games that introduce a ton of different scenarios. Essentially, when you're playing solo, when you're playing cooperatively, if you enjoy team dynamics, if you like games where you like multiple different conditions that are coming at you all at once, from having to cleanse skulls off the map, to making sure they don't destroy buildings, to monsters targeting you and running towards you, to making sure monsters don't get too strong. There are just so many variables that I love that this game introduces. So my thoughts on solo mode, bottom line, pretty much exact same as co-op mode. If you love this variety that you get with every single game, if you enjoy completing different missions, if you love this world building that this game introduces both literally and figuratively, thematically, then I think you're going to love Return to Dark Tower. So with that said, here are my final ratings for this game with the different modes introduced. So for me, competitive mode gets a 2 out of 5. You're missing so many elements to actually compete. I feel like the mode is actually non-existent. No battle awards means you don't really have a reason to fight. Thirdly, it really feels like you're lacking in that player interaction. Some of the elements that make co-op and solo mode great is what uplifts competitive mode. And then switching on over to my rating for co-op and solo mode, solid 4 out of 5. It is an amazing team building experience. The tower and the app are just seamlessly integrated into the board game. It really feels like it is a part of the experience. It also makes life way easier because the way you populate monsters on the map, you just follow what's said on the app instead of like flipping through different pages of a rulebook, trying to figure out your different setups for each entire game. So I feel like the app really makes it that much easier. The final adversary is satisfying to fight. I love the build up. In all modes, I do feel like it is missing that sense of character permanence. And what I mean by that is that, yes, I think it is super cool that you have these traits that you unlock, and there's some really cool chains that show what you haven't unlocked. I think that's awesome. They're called virtues and I love that, but you cannot make it to the end of the game with just those virtues alone, and everything else that you do gain, you have to spend in order to meet different quests. So like treasures, potions, they're all somewhat temporary. So I feel like if there was a little bit more character permanence, if your character essentially leveled up and gained a couple more permanent traits, or at least had access to more treasures that are going to help them out in the final fight, as monsters get stronger, as the tower throws more and more events at you towards the end of the game, then I think that would have really seal the deal here. Overall, if you're looking to get this game strictly for competitive mode, I would definitely recommend trying it with a friend first, or trying it out at a friendly local gaming store. But if you're getting it for co-op and solo, I think you will be happily surprised. Now, what do you think? Does this game need some sense of character progression? Does it need better competitive mode? Is it just me? Do you share the same thoughts? Do you disagree with me on competitive mode? Let me know down in the comments below. I would love to hear what you think about this incredible game. But other than that, don't be surprised to see this on some top gaming lists this year. Thank you all so much for joining me here today on the Return to Dark Tower review. Regardless, I hope you have a wonderful experience playing this game. And with that, I will see you all at the tower.